It's a day that ends in Y, so Chelsea are obviously doing something mad. Hello there, guys. Daniel Childs back here again. Hope you're doing really well. Typical, I was actually away yesterday for a wedding, so I could not make a show and a podcast about the unfolding events this weekend around Chelsea Football Club. Yes, if you thought just as because it's an international break, there's no Chelsea game, there wouldn't be big Chelsea news. How wrong and how naive we all are, because in the current age, there's always something going on around Chelsea. I almost do think this Boehly, Eghbali, Civil War, Clearlake story reflects stuff that I've been talking about for many months now and many others for actually much longer. This is not a well-functioning club. Let's just put that out there straight away. A well-functioning club with a harmonious culture and a well-functioning process and good harmony across the board, you just do not see stories like this emerge. And I think it says a lot. I always talk about this, right? We talked about this with the CEO story the other day, and I talk about this a lot because I do think it is relevant. It's very easy to just look at the base of a story, and sometimes it is just looking at the headline and the story is what it is. It doesn't have to connect to something else. But when we're talking about ownership, when we're talking about leadership, when we're talking about people running the club and what that looks like for the future of this club, you have to look deeper. You can't just go, it's one story, you dismiss it, or you just take it at face value. You have to ask severe questions. And I think the question that comes to mind instantly is, what does this say about the friction between Boehly and Eghbali? This also completely shatters the media narrative that has been going around for still quite a long time, that Todd Boehly is the guy at Chelsea. He is the guy making the big decisions. Whether this will rock that, I'm not entirely sure, because, people have made their perception of Boehly for quite a while now, even though it's been quite clear that he is not the running things. And I think that is the big thing we're going to talk about today, and who should be, if it was just a 50-50 split between Clearlake, Eghbali staying in the current kind of structure, or more upheaval, but Todd Boehly kind of takes main ownership, which is effectively what he always wanted, which he hasn't got at Chelsea Football Club. So we're going to delve into the stories and what it means for Chelsea, because it's obviously not a small story, and I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. So this obviously broke initially through Bloomberg, I believe it was, who reported the story around Friday night, I think it was. And then quickly after, we had, briefing as usual that Clearlake were not interested in selling, but then we've had more depth since then from the Telegraph mainly. Matt Law reporting fears of civil war at Chelsea as Todd Boehly's relationship with Clearlake reaches a breaking point. Boehly apparently is confident he can raise sufficient capital, more than 2.5 billion for the takeover bid, but Clearlake are adamant it will not sell. Apparently it will not sell any of its 61.5 stake in Chelsea, and they will not allow the club to go up for auction again, slightly more than 2 years since Abramovich was forced to sell the club. And of course, Boehly, though, believes very differently, that he can raise enough to convince Chelsea's majority shareholder to get a profit on its initial investment. And apparently investors are said to be ready to back Boehly, who is believed to have a 20 to 30 year vision for Chelsea. That would include a new stadium. The key point for Chelsea is kind of the difference in strategy between Eghbali and Boehly. It's said that Boehly effectively wants a team left in peace to run the club, and you don't have this constant churn of him involved every day, all the time, him making the key decisions. It doesn't mean he doesn't have any oversight, but it's very much his belief regarding the Dodgers. We go way back to when the club was up for sale in that summer 2022 period, when we were talking and thinking about the prospective potential buyers for Chelsea Football Club. And I think that's what always made Boehly, out of the options that were available at the time, I think the most interesting and actually positive. Because one of the things I want to lay out here, for me, Todd Boehly, if you give me an option between both, it's Todd Boehly. There is quite a simple reason, because I think Todd Boehly actually wants to win football matches. And I know that may sound like quite a radical statement, but to me, I think that Todd Boehly has had a long-standing interest, not only in Chelsea, but in the Premier League. Now, you and I may have some criticisms with his strategy, right? I think he's not the holistic kind of dream owner that we all want. I think some of that is trying to get an Abramovich back is probably very unlikely in the modern age, because of what we saw at the end of Abramovich's tenure. But also, he is someone that I just think has an understanding, or at least a desire. Whether he's actually able to fulfill it or not is another big question. But a belief that, yeah, you put people with expertise in positions of power, you let them run the job, and then hopefully you create a successful team. Eghbali, I think, is a very different story. He wants to maintain a day-to-day presence, and not just based on what's been reported, but I'm sure as other people who know about Chelsea, the stories that come out about Eghbali from various sources continue to reflect an individual who wants to kind of be the big guy at Chelsea, who wants to make the key decisions, who may be just in kind of a general Clearlake idea is that everyone else in football is wrong, he is right, he's the guy that's going to be implementing things at Chelsea, and it's his way or the highway. And he doesn't quite believe the same, that you put people with expertise below you. Maybe he feels like he is the guy with expertise who should be leading the club forward. And maybe, just maybe, the ideals and the end point for Chelsea is not quite the same as maybe Boehly and most fans is creating an objectively great football team. It may also be just seeing a potentially depreciated asset in Chelsea a couple of years ago and Clearlake wanting to gain some investment. I'm not saying that Boehly sees absolutely no personal riches or benefit to investing in Chelsea. We're talking about billionaires here. We're obviously talking about money. But in terms of if we're just like weighing up both options here, and I think that's the major problem here. I think Eghbali is a problem at Chelsea. I think just based on what I've read, what I've gleaned over the past 12 months, I don't think he's a good leading figure for Chelsea Football Club. I think a lot of the problems we have seen via Clearlake, and why I continue to stress when I not only talk on my show, but I go on shows like 90 Min and I stress it is not Todd Boehly leading things. If you want to talk about the decision makers at Chelsea, the people running this strategy, it's Boehly, Eghbali, Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart. Those are the three people who, for me, are the three problems at Chelsea, kind of in many ways. That, you know, we can talk about many different variables and players not performing well, coaches maybe not being the best. But of course, I always come back to who are making these decisions consistently, and you always have to look at those for me more often than not, because I just think it's illogical. You know, it's very easy consistently to talk about this player's not good enough, this coach is not good enough. If it happens over and over and over again, as we said with the CEO situation, for me, eventually you have to look above who is appointing those people, what is the culture being set by the people above, and I think obviously it's the case with Eghbali. I think the mess at Chelsea over the summer, you know, this just kind of compounds it for me. This kind of sums up for me how bad of a summer this has been for Chelsea Football Club. And actually, when you actually think about it brutally, what have Clearlake done for Chelsea? What have they succeeded at with Chelsea? It's always why I'm so consistently baffled at people's defence of Clearlake and this ownership, which Boehly is a part of. But, you know, if we're going to talk about the people leading it at least for over a year now, it's Eghbali, right? And it's Winstanley and Stewart. I just don't get people's blind acceptance of what they've seen, because what I've seen, and I think what the rest of the football world have seen, is chaos, is underachievement, is a lot of promises being made and not being fulfilled. Chelsea, objectively for me, over the summer, ripping out kind of the core of the team or selling players who could be better than others they've bought in. I keep on coming back to this. You know, me and Louis, we spoke about this on the Chelsea Echo. I've spoke about it with other people. When you think about Chelsea's transfer business in kind of a way of a sporting way of actually looking at what makes your team better, so many of Chelsea's decisions just don't make sense if you're going by that frame. And when I get told by certain people that the club isn't kind of interested in what you're interested in, right? And maybe me wanting a better football team is illogical. But when I think about it that way, you know, it tells me at the core there's a problem. And actually that problem is not going to be solved by giving this current think tank, current ownership group or current strategy time, because I don't think it's going to lead anywhere positive. Now, of course, this is going to create more upheaval, but you know, the briefing was, I have little sympathy for people at this level. I have little sympathy particularly for the current Chelsea ownership, who love their briefings. They love their positive briefings because now it's one of their own, the inner circle in the sense of Boehly, you know, someone who's been part of this consortium briefing against them. You know, it's what you get. You know, it's you know, Chelsea have had more positive or media briefings than trophies since this ownership took over, and that's not a great thing. That is not something to be proud of. That shows the mess inside and out. So I want to be optimistic. I want to think that Boehly, there would be room for a more positive, or at least just more sane Chelsea under Todd Boehly. Of course, I think to some people when I say sane and Todd Boehly in the same sentence, some people will gasp and maybe think I'm not being that serious. Am I just being too hopeful, too ambitious? Because of course he presided over some of that chaos right at the beginning. But then also there is a reality that he hasn't been making all the big decisions, and the dispute clearly between Pochettino. It seems like now, whether he's briefing this now because it's convenient, but it kind of, if you look at the timeline, the fact that Boehly was meeting up with Pochettino days before he left Chelsea, kind of makes you think, doesn't it now? I would side with Boehly on that. I just think in a footballing sense, I think Boehly has better answers and I think just has better priorities. So if that's your priority, I think that's where you'd want to go. But in the sense of what this means for Chelsea, it continually expands the chaos and the uncertainty around this group. And I think the key point for me, whatever happens, is people realise now this is not a good situation. This is not a nice situation. This is not a sane situation. This is not a sensible or coherent vision for Chelsea. The project is rubbish. And that's what it is, because a good project does not have this many bumps in the road so consistently back and forth, where people are trying to buy you out who are part of your consortium, when a couple of weeks ago we're always being told by certain media briefs that everything's great, everything's sane, everyone in the room agrees with each other, and Chelsea are moving in a positive direction. The fact that one of the key stakeholders in this situation is now turning around and going, I don't like the way this is going, he's obviously got to a breaking point, and that, I think, tells you a lot. I think it just objectively, it tells you that something isn't right behind the scenes. So let me know your thoughts, because the madness will continue, I think, at Chelsea Football Club, and it's going to be a fascinating run of events. But I think it's concerning, right, that only a couple of years since that takeover, when we had the very nervy and stressful time between the sanctions and the takeover, we wanted it to be a bold new vision for Chelsea. It's not me saying I felt that Chelsea, we have to be winning a quadruple. That's another thing. I keep on hearing people say Chelsea fans are so spoiled. Maybe some are, right? But I think Chelsea fans are right to kind of look at the current situation and go, this just isn't right. It doesn't look right. It doesn't look sane. And I think we should expect better, especially for the people who are investing so much money and not getting much back. So there we go. I've tried to sum it up, but listen, it's very hard at the moment to sum up stuff at Chelsea Football Club, because it is such a madness, as people like to say. It really is, and it's crumbling at the seams. It seems like we've reached this civil war. Maybe it was always going to come, but I think it's so ironic that it's come at the end of this summer, when personally I've viewed it as a very, very bad summer and just a very messy summer for Chelsea. So in some ways, if we talk about this as the end of summer, we're coming into autumn now, and maybe it extends into winter. It has been absolute chaos, but isn't that Chelsea Football Club? So those are my thoughts. Let me know yours, and I'll see you again very soon. All the best.